Here's what nobody tells you about childhood promises. They either die quietly in your memory, or they hunt you down decades later and destroy everything in their path. Victoria Jackson fed a starving Korean boy through a school fence for 6 months, gave him her only lunch. Every single day. He promised he'd marry her when he got rich. 20 years later, that boy became Chicago's most feared mafia boss. And he didn't come back to ask permission. He bought her debt, orchestrated her desperation, forced her into a contract marriage. But here's the twist nobody saw coming. Subscribe right now because this story gets absolutely wild, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I love seeing my global family spread across the world. The gun clicked empty, but Do-hyun didn't flinch. Blood dripped from his split knuckles as he stared down the rival gang leader who'd just tried to execute him. "You should have brought more bullets," he said, his Korean accent cutting through the warehouse silence like a blade. The entire room knew what came next. The butcher never left witnesses. But rewind 20 years, and this same man was a starving 10-year-old orphan behind a Chicago school fence. The black girl who pushed peanut butter sandwiches through the chain link every day for 6 months, she was the only reason his heart still beat. And she had absolutely no idea he'd spent 2 decades becoming a monster just to find her again. 3 months before Victoria's world imploded, Do-hyun Park walked through O'Hare Airport at 11:47 p.m. like death, wearing a tailored suit. 6'2", tattooed neck crawling with Korean dragons, $2 million in untraceable bonds in his briefcase. 6 armed men trailing him like shadows. The Baekdu clan, Korea's most brutal mafia organization, had sent him to conquer Chicago's fractured underworld. The Italians were dying. The cartels stretched thin. The Russians disorganized. Do-hyun saw opportunity. Within 48 hours, he'd met every major crime boss in the city. They looked at this young Korean man with his quiet voice and perfect English and thought, easy target. The first man who refused to negotiate? They found his fingers in a box outside his nightclub. The note inside, written in flawless English, "I don't repeat offers." But here's what terrified the entire Chicago underworld. The second man who laughed in Do-hyun's face ended up in a hospital bed for 6 months. Every bone in his hands systematically shattered. Not random violence, calculated, surgical, a message. Within 6 weeks, Do-hyun owned 40% of Chicago's underground economy, protection, loans, smuggling, gambling. A 40-story building in the Loop, purchased in cash, became his headquarters. Everyone started calling him the Butcher. Not because he killed people, because of what he did before they died, but on Do-hyun's first day in his new penthouse office, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city he now controlled, he didn't celebrate. He called his intelligence specialist, a thin man named Min-jun who could find anyone, anywhere. Do-hyun slid a worn photograph across the desk. A 9-year-old black girl with braided hair, smiling at the camera outside an elementary school. "Find her," Do-hyun said quietly. "You have 1 week." Min-jun stared at the 20-year-old photo. "Boss, this will take 1 week." The intelligence specialist disappeared into databases, social media, credit reports, hospital records. Every digital footprint a person leaves behind. 5 days later, he returned with a manila folder. Victoria Jackson, age 29, registered nurse at Northwestern Memorial Hospital, lives in subsidized housing, grandmother deceased 6 months ago. Current debt, $47,000 to a loan shark named Jackson Wright. Do-hyun opened the file, saw her adult face for the first time in 20 years. She'd grown into a beautiful woman. Natural hair, exhausted eyes, a smile that didn't quite reach her face anymore. Life had beaten her down. And Do-hyun's response? Buy her debt. All of it. Then increase the pressure. I want her desperate. I want her terrified. I want her to have nowhere else to turn. Minjun hesitated. Sir, if I may ask, why? Do-yeon touched a faded red ribbon tied to his keychain, dirty, frayed, ancient. Because she's mine. She just doesn't know it yet. Meanwhile, Victoria Jackson's alarm screamed at 5 a.m. She slapped it silent, peeled herself out of bed, immediately regretted being alive. 12-hour nursing shifts, 6 days a week, her apartment freezing because she'd turned off the heat to save money. The eviction notice on her kitchen counter, 9 days until she'd be homeless. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Payment due in 9 days. $50,000. Don't make us come find you. Asterisk Jackson. The loan shark who'd taken over her grandmother's medical debt after Nana Rose died. The man who'd cornered her outside the hospital twice already. His breath hot on her face, his threats graphic and detailed. Victoria had tried everything. Lawyers wanted retainer fees she didn't have. Loan consolidation? Her credit was destroyed. The hospital had done all they could. Churches, charities, community organizations, everyone sympathetic but broke. There was no way out. What Victoria didn't know? The man texting her threats? Working for Do-yeon? The loan shark terrorizing her? Do-yeon had purchased the debt 2 days earlier. The impossible deadline? Engineered specifically to break her. Every single threat, every sleepless night, every moment of terror. All orchestrated by the boy she'd saved 20 years ago. Rewind 20 years. Victoria was 9 years old. Her family lived 3 blocks from Lincoln Elementary in subsidized housing. Peeling paint, broken radiators. Breakfast was oatmeal. Lunch was school-provided. Dinner was rice and beans stretched across 4 plates. They survived. Barely. But Victoria's grandmother taught her, "Baby, we might be poor, but we're never too poor to share what we got." That day at lunch recess, Victoria's friend Keisha was trying to pull her away from the fence. "Girl, leave that boy alone. He's been out there for weeks. Probably dangerous." Victoria clutched her purple lunchbox, worn out, broken clasp. Inside, 1 peanut butter and jelly sandwich, an apple, a juice box, her only food until dinner. But through the chain-link fence she saw him, a skinny Asian boy, maybe 10 years old. Hollow cheeks, dirt-stained clothes, eyes glassy with hunger, lips cracked and bleeding. He wasn't looking at the children playing. He was staring at their food like a drowning man staring at air. "He doesn't look dangerous," Victoria whispered. "He looks like he's dying." Not your problem. But it became her problem, because Victoria walked to that fence, and when she got close enough to see his eyes, dark, desperate, ashamed, she made a choice that would change 2 lives forever. "Hi," she said softly. "I'm Victoria. You look hungry." The boy tried to speak. His voice came out broken, accented, small. "I know English." "Good." Victoria didn't hesitate. She pushed her entire lunchbox through the fence. "Take it. It's okay." The boy grabbed the sandwich, ate it in 4 bites. Tears streaming down his face. Silent, ashamed tears that broke something in Victoria's chest. He devoured everything. The apple, the juice box, even the crackers at the bottom. When he finished, he looked at her like she'd just saved his life, because she had. "Thank you." His voice cracked on both words. "What's your name?" "Jun-ho." "Are you okay, Jun-ho?" He shook his head. "No, and here's the part that would haunt both of them for 20 years. Victoria didn't walk away. She came back the next day, and the next, and the next. For 6 months straight, Victoria gave her only lunch to a starving boy she didn't know. Her family barely had food themselves. But when Victoria's grandmother discovered what she was doing, she didn't stop her. She worked extra hours, made more food, put extra sandwiches in Victoria's lunchbox. "That boy's gonna die without you, baby," her grandmother said. "We can go a little hungry. He can't." They gave Jun-ho medicine they needed for themselves. Victoria gave him her winter coat and shivered through recess in a sweater for 2 months, got sick, nearly ended up in the hospital. Why would a poor family sacrifice that much? Victoria's answer was simple. He's just a kid like us. He deserves to live. Week 24. The last day. Victoria brought everything she could fit in her lunchbox. Sandwiches, cookies, fruit, crackers. She wanted Jun-ho to have enough. Mrs. Patterson, the teacher who'd been secretly helping, had pulled Victoria aside that morning. Child Services found him a placement. He's leaving today. This is your last chance to say goodbye. Victoria ran to the fence during lunch. Jun-ho was already there, waiting. She pushed the overflowing lunchbox through. But this time she also pulled a red ribbon from her hair. Her favorite thing, the one her grandmother had given her. She tied half of it around Jun-ho's wrist. "Keep this," Victoria said, her voice breaking. "So you remember? Someone cares about you." Jun-ho touched the ribbon like it was made of gold. "I never forget you. Never." "Promise me something," Victoria said. "When you're big and strong, come find me. Promise." Jun-ho nodded, tears falling. "I promise. And when I'm rich..." He struggled with the English. "When I'm rich, I marry you." Victoria laughed through her tears. "We're 10 years old, Jun-ho. I still promise." They stood there, 2 children on opposite sides of a fence, making promises they didn't understand would change everything. Then Child Services came. Jun-ho was dragged away screaming. Victoria watched until she couldn't see him anymore. That night, Victoria cried herself to sleep, clutching her half of the ribbon. What she didn't know? Jun-ho would wear that ribbon around his wrist for 6 years straight. Wore it so long it cut into his skin. Left a permanent scar. Because it was the only proof he had that someone had cared. And 20 years later, he'd come back. Not as a boy. As a monster. Back to the present. Victoria's nursing shift was brutal. 3 cardiac arrests, 1 DOA. 2 families she had to deliver devastating news to. By 7 p.m., she was running on fumes and spite. She clocked out, declined her coworker Shanice's offer to get drinks, walked to the parking garage. The November wind cut through her thin jacket. She needed a new coat but couldn't afford one. She was halfway to her beat-up Honda when she heard footsteps behind her. Victoria Jackson. She turned. Jackson, 6'4", built like a linebacker, gold teeth, scar across his left cheek. He'd brought 2 friends, this time, equally large, equally threatening. "I don't have your money yet," Victoria said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Yeah, I know." Jackson smiled. "So we're gonna have to discuss alternative payment methods." He stepped closer. Victoria backed up until she hit a concrete pillar. "I could put you to work," Jackson continued. "Pretty girl like you. You'd make back that 50 grand in, what, 6 months? Maybe less if you're good at it." Victoria's stomach turned. "I'm not doing that." "You don't got much choice, sweetheart." Jackson reached for her. Victoria slapped his hand away. His expression went dark. "Wrong answer." He grabbed her wrist, yanked her forward. Victoria screamed. Then the parking garage flooded with headlights. 3 black SUVs, Escalades, pristine, expensive, screeched into formation, boxing them in. Doors opened. 8 men in black suits emerged, armed, professional. The rear door of the center SUV opened. A man stepped out. Victoria's breath caught. Tall, broad-shouldered. Black suit that probably cost more than her car. But it was the tattoos that made her stare. Intricate dragons and serpents crawling up his neck, disappearing under his collar. His face was angular, handsome in a brutal way. dark eyes that held absolutely no warmth. This was the butcher, and he was looking at Jackson like someone might look at an insect they were about to crush. "You touched her?" Do-yeon said quietly. His Korean accent was slight, but unmistakable. Jackson tried to bluster. "This ain't your business, man. I got a contract." "You had a contract." Do-yeon walked forward slowly, hands in his pockets. "I bought it 2 days ago, which means Victoria Jackson's debt belongs to me now." Victoria's head spun. "What?" Jackson pulled a gun. "I don't care who you—" Do-yeon moved. Fast. Impossibly fast. He disarmed Jackson in 2 moves, broke his wrist in the 3rd. Jackson screamed. Do-yeon's men grabbed the other 2, dragged them away from Victoria. What happened next? Victoria didn't see clearly. Do-yeon gestured. His men pulled Jackson toward one of the SUVs. The sounds that followed made Victoria turn away, hands over her ears. Breaking bones, muffled screams, wet impacts. It lasted 90 seconds. When the sound stopped, Do-yeon walked back to Victoria. He wasn't even breathing hard. There was blood on his right hand, not his. Victoria pressed herself against the pillar, terrified. Do-yeon stopped 6 feet away, studied her. His expression softened almost imperceptibly. "You're safe now," he said quietly. He pulled a business card from his pocket. Black card. Gold embossing. "Tomorrow, 7 p.m., come to the tower. We'll discuss terms." Victoria didn't take the card. "I don't even know who you are." Do-yeon's eyes held hers. "Yes, you do." His voice was soft, almost vulnerable. "You just don't remember yet." He placed the card on the hood of her car, turned, walked away. His men loaded the barely conscious Jackson into an SUV. 30 seconds later, they were gone. Victoria stood alone in the parking garage, shaking, staring at the card. The tower. Penthouse. 7 p.m. Come alone. On the back, handwritten in precise script, "I keep my promises." That phrase, something about those 3 words triggered a memory Victoria couldn't quite grasp. A child's voice, a fence, a promise made 20 years ago. But that was impossible, wasn't it? Victoria didn't sleep that night. By morning, she'd made her decision. She had no choice. Her debt was owned by the most dangerous man in Chicago. If she didn't show up, he'd come find her. And after what she'd witnessed in that parking garage, she didn't want him finding her on his terms. At 6:45 p.m., Victoria stood outside the tower. 40 stories of glass and steel. Security. Cameras everywhere. She was voluntarily walking into the headquarters of a man they called the Butcher. The private elevator ride to the 40th floor felt like ascending to her own execution. The penthouse was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling windows, minimalist furniture, everything black, white, chrome. It looked like a showroom, not a home. Do-yeon stood at the window, back to her. White shirt, sleeves rolled up. Even from behind, he was intimidating. "Close the door," he said without turning. Victoria did. The click echoed. Do-yeon turned. In better light, Victoria could see him clearly. Sharp jawline, dark eyes, tattoos crawling up his neck. Younger than she'd thought. Maybe early 30s. "Sit." He gestured to a leather couch. Victoria sat. Do-yeon remained standing. "Your debt is $47,000. Medical bills from your grandmother's cancer treatment. Jackson was charging you 40% interest. You were never going to pay it off." "I was trying." "I know." His voice softened. "You work 6 12-hour shifts. You skip meals. You haven't bought new clothes in a year. You're drowning, Victoria." Hearing her name in his accent sent a strange shiver through her. "What do you want?" "I want to make you an offer." He walked to a side table, picked up a folder, placed it in front of her. Victoria opened it. A contract. She skimmed the first page. Her breath stopped. Marriage? She looked up, shocked. For 1 year, Do-yeon said smoothly. In exchange, all your debts are cleared. You get protection. You live here. You want for nothing. Why would you? I need a wife to secure a business visa. My current status is temporary. Marriage to a U.S. citizen solves that problem. It's purely transactional. Victoria stared at him. You're a criminal. I'm a businessman. You broke that man's arm. He touched what's mine. I'm not yours. Do-yeon's expression didn't change. Read the contract. You have 24 hours to decide. If you refuse, your debt remains. Jackson was just one collector. There will be others. Victoria's hands shook. This is insane. This is survival. Do-yeon crouched down, so they were eye level. I'm not asking you to love me, Victoria. I'm asking you to let me protect you. Something in his voice, something almost vulnerable, made her hesitate. Why me? She whispered. Out of everyone in this city, why me? Do-yeon's jaw tightened. For a moment, she thought he might tell her the truth. Instead, he stood. Read the contract. I'll have my driver take you home. Victoria didn't sleep that night either. She read the contract 17 times. It was thorough. Legal. 1 year of marriage. Separate bedrooms. No physical intimacy required. All debts paid in full. $10,000 monthly allowance. At year's end, an amicable divorce and $100,000 severance. It was insane. It was also her only way out. At 11 a.m., Victoria called the number on the card. I'll do it, she said when Do-yeon answered. Silence. Then, I'll send a car. Noon. 3 hours later, they were married at City Hall. No guests, no family. Just a judge, 2 witnesses, and paperwork that made Victoria Jackson into Victoria Park. Do-yeon signed his name with steady hands. Victoria's shook. You may kiss the bride, the judge said. Do-yeon looked at Victoria. She nodded slightly. He leaned in, pressed his lips to hers for exactly 2 seconds. Chaste. Cold. Nothing. But his hand trembled when he pulled away. They rode back to the tower in silence. Victoria's 3 suitcases, everything she owned, were loaded into the trunk. The penthouse felt different now. Do-yeon showed her to a bedroom. Massive, luxurious. Walk-in closet already filled with designer clothes in her exact size. How did you? I had someone shop for you. If anything doesn't fit, let me know. Victoria opened a drawer. Designer labels? Hundreds of dollars per item. Thousands in this closet. The kitchen is fully stocked. There's staff, but they only come when called. My room is at the other end of the hall. You won't be disturbed. Where will you sleep? My room. The contract said, separate bedrooms. Yes. Victoria turned to face him. So this is... We're really not... I'm not going to touch you, Victoria. Do-yeon's voice was firm. You're safe here, I promise. That word, promise, triggered something again. A memory she couldn't quite grasp. A child's voice. A fence. A ribbon. Do-yeon started to leave, then paused at the door. Get some rest. You look exhausted. He closed the door softly. Victoria stood alone, wearing a wedding ring she hadn't chosen, married to a man she didn't know. She should have been terrified. Instead, she was exhausted. She showered, put on silk pajamas from the drawer, collapsed into bed. The mattress was perfect. The sheets were Egyptian cotton. She was asleep in minutes. Victoria woke at 2:17 a.m. Her stomach growled. She hadn't eaten since yesterday. She walked to the kitchen, expecting it to be empty. Instead, she found Do-yeon sitting at the island, eating a sandwich. He'd changed into sweats and a t-shirt. Without the suit, he looked younger. Almost normal, except for the tattoos covering both arms. He looked up when she entered. Hungry? Victoria nodded. Do-yeon stood. walked to the counter, returned with a plate. On it, a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Cut diagonally, crust removed. Exactly the way she used to make them 20 years ago. Victoria stared at it. Her hands started trembling. How did you? She looked up at Do-yun. He was watching her carefully, waiting. Victoria picked up the sandwich, took a bite. The taste hit her like a freight train. Cheap white bread, generic peanut butter, grape jelly. Not gourmet, not expensive. Familiar. Exactly the way she used to make sandwiches for the starving boy behind the fence. The boy who didn't speak English well. The boy who cried when she fed him. The boy who promised he'd come back when he was rich. The boy who promised he'd marry her. Jun-ho? The name fell out of her mouth before she could stop it. Do-yun's entire body went still. Victoria's mind raced. The promise. The ribbon. The boy who'd said those exact words. I keep my promises. Oh my God. The sandwich fell from her hands. Jun-ho? Do-yun. Jun-ho, the starving orphan she'd fed through a fence 20 years ago, nodded once. Hi, Victoria, he said softly. I told you I'd come back. Victoria couldn't breathe. Jun-ho died, she whispered. Child Services took you. I tried to find you. They said you were placed with a family in Michigan. I wrote letters. They all came back undeliverable. Do-yun sat down slowly. They lied. There was no family in Michigan. I went to 3 group homes, then juvenile detention when I was 14. What? Why? I stole food. Got caught. The judge said I was a repeat offender and a flight risk. 4 years inside. That's where I met the Baekdu clan. They recruited kids like me, orphans with nothing to lose. Victoria's hand covered her mouth. All this time I thought, you were safe. I thought you were happy. I was never safe. Not until I became dangerous. He looked at her directly. But I thought about you every single day. The ribbon, the sandwiches, the way you smiled at me like I mattered. It kept me alive. Why didn't you find me sooner? I tried. For 5 years, I searched. But Victoria Jackson is a common name. You'd moved. Your grandmother left no forwarding information. I bought properties near Lincoln Elementary hoping you'd come back. He gestured around them. I built all of this thinking maybe, if I became powerful enough, rich enough, I could find you. Victoria stood, needing distance. The debt. You bought my debt on purpose. Yes. You orchestrated everything, Jackson, the pressure, the threats, all of it. Yes. So I'd have no choice but to come to you. Do-yun stood as well. I wasn't going to let you be hurt. I had men watching you for months. The day Jackson touched you was the day I intervened. If he'd tried anything sooner, you would have killed him. Yes. Victoria's hands shook with anger. So you manipulated me, forced me into this marriage, all because of some childhood promise? No. Do-yun's voice rose for the first time. I did it because I love you. I've loved you since I was 10 years old. I've loved you through juvie, through the clan, through every terrible thing I've done to survive. You were the only good thing I'd ever known, and I wasn't going to let this city destroy you the way it almost destroyed me. Silence crashed between them. I need time, Victoria whispered. I need to think. Take all the time you need. I'll sleep in my office tonight. Do-yun walked past her, paused at the doorway. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. I should have told you the truth from the beginning. I was just afraid you'd run if you knew who I'd become. He left her standing in the kitchen with a half-eaten peanut butter and jelly sandwich and 20 years of questions. She didn't know how to ask. The next week was strange. They lived in the same space but moved around each other like ghosts. Do-yun left early, came back late, unfailingly polite, asking if she needed anything, making sure she was comfortable, keeping his distance. But Victoria noticed things. The way he ate. Methodically. Slowly. Never wasting a single crumb. He'd finish everything on his plate, even if he was clearly full. When she left half a bagel on the counter one morning, she came back to find it wrapped carefully in plastic wrap with a note. In case you're hungry later. Old habits from starvation. They never really left. She also noticed he didn't sleep. At 3 a.m. she'd find him in the living room, staring out at the city, that faded ribbon wrapped around his fingers. Once she watched from the hallway as he pressed it to his lips, eyes closed, body tense with some emotion she couldn't name. Another night she woke to find him standing in her doorway, not creepy, just watching, making sure she was safe. When their eyes met, he'd murmured an apology and disappeared. He looked at her like she was something precious, something he'd die to protect. And despite everything, the manipulation, the violence, the lies, Victoria felt something shifting inside her chest. This wasn't the monster everyone feared. This was a broken boy who'd grown into a dangerous man because the world had given him no other choice. "We need to talk," Victoria said one morning over breakfast. Do-yeon looked up from his coffee, nodded. "I'm not saying I forgive you for lying or manipulating me. That was wrong. I know. But I understand why you did it." Victoria took a breath. "I'm not going anywhere. Not yet. I want to understand who you became. I want to know what happened to the boy I knew." Do-yeon's expression cracked slightly. Hope. Relief. "I'll tell you everything. Anything you want to know." Start with the tattoos. 3 weeks into their strange marriage, Victoria asked if she could go shopping. Just normal shopping. A break from the penthouse. Do-yeon frowned. "I'll send men with you. I don't need bodyguards to buy shampoo." "Victoria, please, I need some normalcy." He relented, but insisted she take his driver and check in every hour. The Magnificent Mile was crowded. Victoria wandered through stores, just enjoying being anonymous in a crowd. She was leaving Nordstrom when she noticed them. 2 men, mid-30s, dressed casually but moving with purpose. They'd been behind her in the last 3 stores. Victoria's heart rate spiked. She pulled out her phone, texted Do-yeon. "I think I'm being followed." His response was immediate. "Where are you? Stay in public." She typed back her location. Before she could hit send, a hand clamped over her mouth. A cloth, chemical smell, pressed to her face. Victoria tried to scream, to fight, but the world went fuzzy. The last thing she heard, before blacking out, "Boss says bring her alive." Do-yeon was in a meeting when his phone buzzed. Victoria's text. The words made his blood turn to ice. "Meeting's over," he said, standing abruptly. "Everyone out." His men scattered. Do-yeon called Victoria. It rang 6 times. No answer. He tried again. Nothing. He pulled up the tracker he'd secretly placed in her phone. The signal showed her moving. Fast. Wrong direction. Away from the tower, toward the docks. Dante. That Russian bastard had been making noise for weeks, angry about losing territory. This wasn't business. This was revenge. Do-yeon grabbed his gun, called his head of security. "Victoria's been taken. South Docks. Bring everyone. Full armament, now." He took the elevator down, mind racing. If they hurt her? If they touched her? If she was scared? His vision blurred red. Taemin was waiting with 10 men, all armed. 3 SUVs. "We leave in 90 seconds. Do-yeon ordered. "Rules of engagement, kill anyone who stands between me and her. No exceptions." The drive took 12 minutes, felt like hours. Do-yeon's hands clenched around his gun. He'd killed before. Practical. Necessary. Never personal. This was personal. The tracker led them to an abandoned warehouse. Dante's territory. Do-yun's men surrounded the building, silent, professional. Do-yun kicked the front door open. Inside, Dante stood in the center with 6 men. Victoria was tied to a chair, conscious but terrified. Blood trickled from her split lip. Her shirt was torn. Do-yun saw red. "Park!" Dante called out. "Nice of you to join us. We were just getting acquainted with your pretty wife." Do-yun walked forward, didn't run, didn't rush, just moved with the inevitability of death itself. "Let her go," Do-yun said quietly. "And I'll make your death quick." Dante laughed. "You're outnumbered. I've got 20 men in this building." "You had 20 men." Do-yun gestured. Bodies dropped from the rafters. Dante's guards, taken out silently by Do-yun's snipers. "Now you have 6. Well, 5. He shot the man closest to Victoria without looking. Point blank. The man dropped. Chaos erupted. Gunfire. Screaming. Do-yun moved through it like a force of nature. Not elegant, not controlled. Brutal. Efficient. Terrifying. Broke bones. Shattered kneecaps. Left men crying on the concrete. When only Dante remained, Do-yun grabbed him by the throat, lifted him off the ground. "Did you touch her?" Dante choked out a laugh. "Just a little." Do-yun threw him 15 feet into a concrete pillar, walked over, grabbed him again. "She's not my wife," Do-yun said loud enough for every surviving man to hear. "She's my life. You touch her, you threaten me, and I don't tolerate threats." He beat Dante until the man stopped moving. Then he turned to Victoria. She was still tied to the chair, eyes wide, covered in blood spatter that wasn't hers. Terrified, shaking. Do-yun dropped to his knees in front of her, hands trembling as he cut the ropes. "Did they touch you?" His voice broke. "Did they hurt you?" "My lip, that's all. I'm okay." "You're not okay." He pulled her into his arms, buried his face in her hair. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I should have protected you. I should have—" "Jun-ho." Victoria's hands came up to his face. "I'm alive. You saved me. I almost lost you. But you didn't." They stayed like that, kneeling in blood and violence, holding each other like the world was ending. Back at the tower, Victoria sat on the bathroom counter while Do-yun cleaned his wounds. He'd been shot, grazed his shoulder. Wouldn't even let the medic look at it until Victoria was checked first. She was fine. Bruised lip. Rope burns on her wrists. Terrified but unharmed. Do-yun was a mess. Blood soaked through his shirt. His hands trembled as he tried to bandage himself. "Let me," Victoria said softly. She took the gauze, carefully, cleaned the wound. It wasn't deep. He'd been lucky. As she worked, her fingers brushed a scar on his wrist. Thin, white, old. She traced it without thinking. "What's this from?" Do-yun went very still. "You don't remember?" Victoria looked closer. The scar formed a ring around his wrist, like something had been tied there, tight, for a long time. Her ribbon. "Oh my God." She looked up at Do-yun. Tears filled her eyes. "You wore it until it cut into your skin." "I never took it off. Not once. For 6 years I wore it until it literally became part of me. Even after it disintegrated, the scar remained." His voice was raw. "So I'd never forget. So I'd always remember someone cared." Victoria's hands cupped his face. "Jun-ho." "I kept my promise, Victoria. I came back. I got rich. I found you." Tears slid down his cheeks. "I know I'm not the boy you knew. I know I'm a monster now. But I love you. I've always loved you. And if you want to leave, I'll let you go. I'll give you the divorce, the money, whatever you need. But please don't think for 1 second that you don't matter. You're the only thing that's ever mattered." Victoria kissed him. Soft, tender, tasting salt from both their tears. When she pulled back, she whispered, "You're not a monster. You're the boy who kept his promise." They made love that night. Slowly, carefully, 20 years of longing spilling over into something gentle and desperate and real. Afterward, tangled in sheets, Victoria traced the dragon tattoo on his chest. "I love you too," she said quietly. "I don't know when it happened. Maybe it never stopped. But I love you, Jun-ho." He pulled her closer. "Do-yun. Call me Do-yun. Jun-ho died in juvie. Do-yun survived." "Then I love Do-yun," she smiled, "the man who kept his promise." They fell asleep wrapped around each other. Finally home. 6 months later, Victoria and Do-yun stood outside Lincoln Elementary. The school had been closed for years. Budget cuts. But scaffolding now surrounded the building. "Reconstruction starts next week," Do-yun said, arm around Victoria's waist. "New classrooms, new playground, fully funded after-school programs, free lunch for every student." Victoria stared at the fence, the chain-link barrier where everything had started. "You're rebuilding it." "We're rebuilding it," he corrected. "I'm funding it. You're running the community outreach program." She'd quit her hospital job 2 months ago to work full-time with at-risk youth. Do-yun had provided the capital. Together, they were creating something good from all the darkness. Victoria walked to the fence, touched the metal. Do-yun joined her, pulled out a red ribbon. New. Vibrant. "I think it's time for a new promise," he said softly. "What kind of promise?" "That will help kids like I was. That will make sure no child goes hungry at this school. That will build something that lasts." He tied the ribbon to the fence. "And that I'll love you every day for the rest of my life." Victoria tied her own ribbon next to his. "And I'll love you. The boy you were, and the man you became." They kissed in front of the fence where it all began. 2 ribbons fluttering in the Chicago wind. A promise kept, and a future built on the foundation of kindness that had saved them both. Behind them, construction crews arrived. The work of rebuilding was beginning. But the real rebuilding, the healing of 2 broken souls who'd found each other across 20 years, that work was already done. They were home. Here's what this story teaches us. Childhood kindness isn't weakness. It's an investment in a future you'll never see. Victoria's sandwich didn't just feed a starving boy. It created a man who would burn down the world to protect her 20 years later. That's the power of seeing someone when everyone else looks away. If this story moved you, there's more coming. Because Victoria and Do-yun's story doesn't end here. There's a rival gang forming. A secret from Do-yun's past in Korea. And a choice Victoria will have to make that could destroy everything they've built. Subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Drop a comment telling me which moment hit you hardest. And remember, your small act of kindness today might be someone's reason to survive tomorrow. The cycle continues.